Hey yo gang, what's happening? It's your boy Araine TJ back again with another reaction video. And yo, hey yo, this was just crazy, bro. I know y'all heard about this, yo. So this guy deleted a father and son over a noise complaint, bro. Like, what is going on in society today, bro? People are just pulling out the blickies and deleting people for the simplest reasons. This girl, this 21-year-old in Philly just deleted a bus driver for $2.50, gang. That's crazy. Check this out.
Numerous officers discharged their weapon. The male was removed to a local hospital. The officers were removed to a local hospital, and the male eventually succumbed to his injuries.
Crazy.
The male was the male who was identified as our subject for the homicide on Sunday in East Flatbush.
There was a
he got deleted too?
on surveillance video from a Brooklyn apartment building that has caught a lot of attention. With police confirming the shooter is now dead, there is still a question if his actions were self-defense or murder. New York criminal defense attorney Paul Townsend gives his take on this rapidly evolving story. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
Bro, crazy.
Hey there, everybody.
Bro.
So first of all, before we get started, as you can tell, we are in a different studio. We're always trying things out.
Nah, bro.
Changing. Seriously, leave a comment. We can always go back to the... Let's get back into the story that we want to talk about. There is this story out of Brooklyn, New York. It is absolutely tragic. It is a really, really tough one to cover. We are going to go to this apartment complex in East Flatbush. And surveillance video shows a man who police have identified...
Did he just say apartment complex? Anyways, that's not that big a deal.
Identified as 47-year-old Jason Pass getting into an argument with his upstairs neighbors. Apparently, this was about a noise complaint. There had been a persistent issue. Well, the argument ends with Pass pulling out a gun and shooting 47-year-old Vladimir Maturin and his stepson, 27-year-old Chinwe Mood, all in front of Marie DeLille, the boy's mother, the wife of Maturin, and her daughter. And this ends both tragically with Maturin and Mood dying. Now, at this time, police...
First of all, gang, he's so coward, bro. He's so coward. The moment the woman pulled the guy off and he's fully distracted, that's when you gonna pull out a blicky, bro. You gonna pull out a blicky for a guy with a scissors, bro? Your neighbor?
Have confirmed that Pass is dead. Yeah, according to police, officers had stopped him while he was driving. They ran the plates. They saw that the car that he was driving was connected to the case. He apparently jumps out of the car with a knife. A standoff ensues for 15 minutes, and he ends up charging at them with the weapon, and officers shoot him. He was taken to the hospital where he died of his injuries, shot in the chest and the leg. But just because the suspect is dead doesn't mean that the investigation ends. And by the way, when this story first broke, a woman who claimed to be Pass's sister said he was acting in self-defense.
Right.
She said, they tried to attack my sibling. My brother just didn't go upstairs to kill them. We are not problematic people. Let's talk.
Why would you carry a blicky upstairs over an argument for a noise complaint if you don't intend to at least brandish it, bro? Like, you at least intend to pull it out. Why you carry it upstairs for an argument if you're not gonna take it out? And what's the golden rule about blickies? You don't pull it unless you're ready to squeeze, right? So come on now. Self-defense, bro. You'd leave it at home. If you weren't violent, crazy people, you would have leave that at home and you'd have handled it with words.
Talk about this right now with your criminal defense attorney Paul Townsend. Paul, thanks so much for coming back
crazy,
on.
Bro.
The reason I said it in full transparency, you and I had recorded this podcast earlier before we found out that Pass was killed. So things have changed. But from my perspective, I'm just shocked at how quickly this all escalated. 3 people dead over the course of a few days over a noise complaint. Have you ever seen anything like that?
Jesse, thanks again for having me back on.
Yeah.
And yes, I have. Obviously, this is not a terribly common occurrence. However, it is something that does occur, especially in lower income housing complexes like what we see here. Sometimes these types of disputes between neighbors, whether it's a noise complaint, whatever it is, they can escalate. And what's really unique about this particular escalation is that the whole entire thing is caught on camera. So we get to see basically what happens from the time that Pass comes up the stairs to the altercation.
That guy was so scared. He was, and that's why he pulled it out. He was so scared.
Their interaction, and then ultimately we see Pass pull out a firearm, and really the only way to describe it is to execute Maturin and his son Mood. It's really chilling. This is what makes this a very unique occurrence.
Yeah, a couple of things there. I mean, it's so many times when we cover shootings, it's not caught on tape. It's based on witnesses' accounts.
Crazy,
trying to piece
bro.
together what happened. So the fact that this is all on tape now gives us a sense of what happened, and we'll get into that in a minute. I mean, when you think about this, this felt like a ticking time bomb, right? The NYPD was saying that Pass had called 311, an emergency number, 6 times on his neighbors over noise complaints. The chief of detectives, I should say, said that these were noise complaints, basically people walking. The apartment upstairs didn't have carpeting, so people were walking back and forth. That generated a lot of these calls. Apparently, Pass would bang on the ceiling. Maturin banged on the floor. The building's management had said that there were so many complaints, they had recommended mediation, but that was never done. It seems like, I wonder if this could have been avoided.
So it's hard to know if it could have been avoided. I think you may be onto something with calling it a ticking time bomb, because the signs were there. This had been a long-standing dispute between the two parties. Certainly, that number of 311 calls is indicative of the fact that this is not going to necessarily resolve itself. And in those types of housing complexes, walls can be thin, ceilings and floors can be thin. There was no carpeting or no rugs, as it was said. So a hardwood floor, those types of noises are going to be amplified under those circumstances. And so nobody, I think, is arguing that Pass didn't have necessarily a legitimate gripe about it being loud. But the way that he certainly went about dealing with it in this particular circumstance was, I think, understandably condemnable. But
yeah,
this is such a thing that happens in any time you get a bunch of people living in close quarters. Disputes are going to arise, and it's very difficult to parse out which ones are going to end in homicides and which ones can be legitimately just devised on their own.
I want to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video. Now, before you say, you don't know what makes the process legal one, I don't. I mean, 529 on your phone. I look at this video, I know what the woman who's claiming to be a sister said, that this looked like self-defense. I've kind of seen that online. I don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, at one point, Maturin comes face to face with Pass, and Maturin is a big guy, muscular guy,
and it appears
he's carrying scissors that are near Pass's neck, even you could argue directly pointed to them. But then he's moved away, and there's that moment between when he's moved away and his back is turned to when Pass removes his weapon, his handgun, and fires upon him and Mood. And it feels that separation of time is why this just, in my eyes, doesn't look like self-defense.
No.
Is there any way that could have been justified as a form of self-defense?
So let me start the answer by saying that fundamentally, I agree with you. I think self-defense is a difficult argument to make. But let's try and steelman it. Let's see what we can do if we're Pass's lawyers here. So you have this long-standing dispute, and we know from the woman who says that she's Pass's sister that Pass had told her that he had been threatened by Maturin in the past. So he might have been coming to this situation ready for an altercation, believing that he was going to be assaulted by Maturin.
Okay.
So Maturin comes out of the apartment when Pass is already there talking to the children, and he's got scissors in his hand. And he's a bodybuilder, and the video shows that he is significantly bigger than Pass is. And we don't have audio, so we don't know what's said between the parties. All we know is that Maturin comes out, he is clearly holding scissors, and he brandishes them. In all fairness, he brandishes them, and he holds them close to Pass's neck. So you have the beginnings of what could be formulating a self-defense argument. But here's where I think it really breaks down, is that Maturin then turns around.
Are you going to
talks to the
hold on? Is he going to repeat exactly what that guy just said when he asked him his question?
children. He talks to Mood, he talks to his daughter. They kind of actually move him away, and then he moves away.
Yes, that moment of time.
That's the point that Pass pulls a firearm, which he hadn't been holding at that point. So Maturin didn't.
He just asked you about it.
It doesn't appear that Maturin knew that he had it. And that's when he gets shot. And then a bunch of little things happen, which I think really destroy the self-defense.
You did not answer the question, gang.
Incapacitate. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, look, and we're talking about this. Obviously, there's not going to be a trial. I mean, Pass is dead. But it is interesting because you talked about how these kinds of things happen a lot. It is important to understand what happened here. And look, I'll let you jump back in. Just for me, the things that stand out are he seems to be right by the stairs. So when Maturin turns his back, he could have ran down.
Mm-hmm.
He fires so many times. And you could say, well, he thought he was going to put down the threat. Maybe Mood was coming towards him. He fired upon him. But the thing that changes it all for me is when he fires that last shot into Maturin as he's lying on the ground, a shot for good measure. That looked like an execution.
Absolutely. All of those things are really kind of indicative and detrimental to a self-defense argument. As you say, the positioning is the first thing that we really need to look at. Pass is right at the top of the stairs. When Maturin turns his back to him and is kind of corralled away, and there's this distance, this separation between them, Pass doesn't go back to his apartment, call the cops and say, you won't believe this guy just threatened me with a pair of scissors. He's a menace. I went up there calmly to ask him to keep the noise down, and I thought he was going to stab me in the neck. Can you do something? Can you help me?
Right.
He pulls a gun out.
Right.
Let's not forget that Pass is a former correction officer at Sing Sing. Yep. He's former law enforcement. You would expect to have some kind of training as a correction officer and how to de-escalate violent situations, as opposed to violence full stop, pulling a gun out and just shooting somebody. And then you talk about this final execution style shot. That is really a very, very telling thing to do, because that to me comes across as personal. That to me comes across as kind of almost wrathful.
He wanted to do it for a long time.
See what you made me do here. If this was self-defense, you would have expected him to kind of just fire the gun, neutralize what he considered the threat, and kind of get away. You see in the video, he waits 20 seconds for the elevator. He doesn't call for help. And then he also kills Mood, which seems to be complete overkill, considering he's a kid, basically. He has no weapon. He's not a threat, and he's not in any way posturing himself as an aggressor. So for all those reasons, I think self-defense in this particular situation would be a very hard sell.
Yeah, it may.
I feel like, based on what they're saying so far, the little that I've heard, I feel like this Paz guy, he's been complaining for so long, and he just got fed up, and he went up there with the blicky of all intentions of shooting. He had all intentions. That's what I think. You know what I mean? And he probably had a problem with the son and the father, and he was like, all right, today, somebody, at least one of them going. And he got his opportunity when the wife pulled him away. That's what it looks like to me, gang. But let's finish watching it, and then maybe you could comment down below. Let me know what you think.
Maybe it would have been a different case if he didn't fire the way that he did, but if he would have waited at the scene, immediately called 911, sat down, explained to law enforcement that he was acting in self-defense. I don't think it would have worked, but it would have been a different situation. And as we have been reporting, he apparently is stopped by police, lunges at them with a knife. He is shot. How does that change the analysis in any way?
It shows that he's crazy, bro.
So it's another kind of piece to the puzzle of what's going on in this man's mind. So as you say, he doesn't call 911. He doesn't sit there and wait for the authorities or for EMTs or an ambulance to come and try and explain to them what happened. He flees, albeit slowly, but he flees. And then he's found the following day, and the license plate comes back as kind of a be on the lookout. This person might be associated with a potentially criminal act, and he's wanted to be brought in. And as you say, this then evolves into a pretty elongated standoff where officers, kind of have guns trained on it, and he's kind of holding himself out, and he's got this knife. He doesn't have the gun on him, He's got a knife. And instead of just saying, okay, you got me, I'm going to turn myself in, let's end the violence of this whole proceeding at this point. According to the NYPD, he charges them, lunges at them, and basically puts them in a position where they have to shoot him 4 times to put him down so that their safety. I was
going to ask you that. I mean, do you think that shooting is going to be investigated to make sure everything was by the book? Because, I mean, based on that, it seems like they did everything they were supposed to do.
Absolutely. Every time there's an officer involved shooting, especially if it's a fatality, there will be an investigation. I don't think that this one is likely to result in any sort of administrative finding against the officers. Right. It smells like a good shooting. You know, here, obviously.
Did he use it a good shooting?
Here talking about it just after. I think the way that it's been portrayed, at least,
I know what he means, though. I know what he means, but bro.
Suspicious about it.
Paul, you had mentioned that he was working as a corrections officer at Sing Sing Prison, relatively new there, my understanding. He didn't have a licensed firearm, and right now police are collecting more evidence in the case. They're looking to get a warrant to process his car. What are they looking for? What do you think's happening now at this point in the investigation?
Well, I would imagine, one, they're looking for that gun that was used to kill Return and Mood, because if he's not registered to have a firearm, then who knows who that gun belongs to?
Right.
Has it been involved potentially in other criminal acts in the past? Is it now an unregistered gun?
Yo, and what if, like, you know, whoever gun it is, you know what I mean? Now they in some heat. You know? Bro, that's just crazy, bro. That's how you're gonna solve a domestic, well, not even domestic, sorry, a noise complaint argument between you and your neighbor, bro. Like, that's just crazy, bro.
It's just cycling, you know, between other people who shouldn't have it. So a big concern for the NYPD is going to be locating that firearm, ascertaining, you know, whether there is a legitimate owner, and if not, you know, the confiscation and potentially destruction of it so that it's not used in any further criminal behavior.
You mean that someone else could be facing some legal liability if they helped him in any way, supplied the weapon, hid him for any period of time? I mean,
hid the weapon.
That's a second part of the investigation, seeing if he had any connections or anybody helped him, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That gun might have been, you know, legally purchased by somebody who brought it to Brooklyn and started giving it to other people whenever they asked for a firearm. You know, that's a criminal act in and of itself.
I want to finish this conversation with trying to explain the impact of this. I mentioned Marie DeLille, whose husband and son were killed. She said, "My husband had no gun, no weapon. Why did you bring a gun to shoot my family? Why would you bring a gun to tear my family apart? Why? Why?" And then we hear from Brooklyn Councilwoman Farrah Lewis, who said that basically Matern was the breadwinner of the family, father of 4. He was working 2 jobs to support them as a bus driver and as an Uber driver. And now that he's gone, she says they have nothing. It's just a really sad set of circumstances here to think about how all of this unfolded. A senseless killing and senseless killings, I should say, and really wish this never happened. Wishing the family all the best, because this is an incredibly difficult situation.
So sad, bro.
Paul Townsend, thanks for taking the time once again to talk about this case. We really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching today's video. You know, we just went over this tragedy, like just absolutely bonkers, just crazy, just ridiculous what's happening in the world. Everything that's going on now is just way too much, like, nonsensical violence, bro, you know? Unnecessary, unwarranted. It doesn't solve anything. And you would think in 2023 we human beings would find more peaceful ways to resolve situations, but it is what it is, you know. It's unfortunate. So my condolences go out to the family, hearts and prayers, you know. And yeah, I don't even know. I don't even feel right asking for likes or for that. You know what I mean? Just thanks for watching today's video, and I'm gonna see y'all in the next one.